Accounts receivable is still misunderstood and oversimplified, right? That's one of my biggest qualms. It's something that I talk about all the time. It's a lagging metric, and when it's by itself, it doesn't really tell you much. You need to understand what you're solving for AI to do anything.
Welcome to Heroes of AI, powered by Growfin, a thought leadership series that spotlights the unsung champions and their transformational contributions in solving some of the biggest problems in the accounts receivable space. I'm your host, Pradyut Hande, and on this episode, we feature Sarah McCauley, founder of Effitech Solutions and the original revenue storyteller. Welcome to episode 2, part 1 of Heroes of AR powered by Growfin. I'm your host, Pradyut Hande, Associate Director of Product Marketing at Growfin, and today I'm joined by none other than Sarah McCauley. Sarah is the founder of Effitech Solutions and the original revenue storyteller. With over 20 years of experience in AR, billing, and operations, she helps businesses stop revenue leaks and turn accounts receivable into a strategic growth lever. Sarah's no-nonsense style, deep expertise, and obsession with cash clarity make her the go-to for scaling SMBs, ready to ditch the chaos and get their cash and keep it flowing. Thanks for making the time today, Sarah, and joining us here at Heroes of AR.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pradyut. I really appreciate it. I know we have a lot to unpack, and I'm ready to get into it.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let's get down to it, shall we? All right. So let's take a little short, brisk jog down your accounts receivable journey, right? I'm going to paint you a vivid picture from back in the day. It's 2008. You started out as an AR specialist, and over the years, you've risen up the ranks at the likes of Circle K, Wesco, to eventually enjoying leadership positions at the likes of ChangePoint, InVision, and GitLab. Walk me through how, AR as a function was back then, and how would you say it's changed over the last 17 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, I started as a specialist many moons ago, and I actually didn't get into AR as that first step. I started in accounts payable and office management, and actually started in automotive industry as well as construction and distribution, which is where the beginning of my career started. So as I've kind of gotten into this space, opportunities have come about for accounts receivable that didn't exist then, which is really great, right? So it shows us that businesses are thinking more strategically. In terms of, where AR has come and where it will hopefully be going in the future, AR has kind of always largely been seen as this, send the email, get the payment motion. And that is really a very weak and honestly dated outlook on how people view accounts receivable, just based on the amount of the volume of data that's available in an accounts receivable portfolio. And so it was kind of the edge of saying that it was just get the invoice paid, apply the cash, and kind of move on. Right. And so there's a lot of oversimplification in the accounts receivable world. And so, really with the adoption of accounts receivable being a more strategic role in the company, you've seen a lot more positions open up that are beyond a manager. And for many, many years, manager was kind of the peak of being in accounts receivable and credit. And so from my perspective, what hasn't changed is that accounts receivable is still misunderstood and oversimplified, right? That's one of my biggest qualms. It's something that I talk about all the time.
We empathize with that.
Yeah, it's a big one. And then the next one would be that I think teams are still expected to do more with less. And the expectations of those positions is becoming more amplified in an organization, right? We're not just collecting, you are applying cash, you're reconciling, you're managing disputes and kind of doing all of these things. And so those things really have not changed. But what has changed is this tech explosion. right? Even 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have tools for accounts receivable. There wasn't a lot in the market that was focused on building efficiency in the space. And then I would also say like role elevation has improved. So now you're seeing more senior manager, director, director plus, and even VP and heads of collection, which
Okay.
weren't things that you saw 20 years ago, right?
Right.
They didn't exist. And so, one of the things that I'm also seeing are the pressures in the industry on these teams. I'm seeing entry level positions for analysts and specialists requiring MBAs.
Oh,
Seeing, you go look at these entry level positions and you're seeing all the things that a company wants a single position to do, which I feel like is fairly unrealistic. I
right.
went the long way to answer that question, so I kind of took the long road. So I'm sorry if I wasn't as brisk as you would have liked, but
No, no, that's
I felt
perfectly
like,
all right. It's a
yeah, I
journey for
feel like it's
17
important.
years, so you're allowed that leeway.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah. And so ultimately, I didn't grow in AR because like I mastered a process. I feel like I grew in it because I treated it like business intelligence versus get the invoice, right? Apply the
Right,
payment. And so
right.
I'll end it with that.
No, makes a lot of sense. I think, the fact that there are so many realities from back in the day that still hold true, it boggles one's mind to think that evolution has not happened at that pace. But it's also good to hear, and even from our conversations that we have with industry folks, that the role is definitely getting elevated over a period of time. And yeah, the sky is potentially the limit, but we're here to unpack more of that.
Yes, I agree.
All right. So, we talked a little bit about your journey. It's been, 17 years, and now today you find yourself running your own consulting firm, Effitech. So, congratulations on that to begin with.
Thank you.
And until recently, I think your last role was at GitLab, where you were largely managing AR operations during a period of really demanding growth goals, right? And you were also around when the pandemic was around, even a little bit post the pandemic as well. Just wanted your thoughts on, what were the KPIs that you were responsible for in terms of improving cash flow predictability and operational efficiency?
Yeah, that's a really thoughtful question. So I just want to say thank you for that. One of the things that I think is kind of the gold standard in accounts receivable, I want to kind of get into that and then also into the limitations that exist within that. And so I think the gold standard, which was very much the case for GitLab and many prior companies, that kind of DSO, right? So your day sales outstanding is kind of the measure that companies look at as the point of success for the operations and their collections.
Right.
And I think, I inherit that at a lot of companies, not just GitLab, right? And so DSO is that bar for measure on everything, and it's really standard. And I think it's the one that everybody knows. So it kind of sticks around. Now,
Right.
my issue with it is honestly that it's a lagging metric. And when it's by itself, it doesn't really tell you much,
Right.
right? It doesn't tell a story. It doesn't account for sales timing. It doesn't account for cash sales. It doesn't account for any, and it often hides the work that the team does, especially when you have inconsistency in that sales timing, where you
True.
have like, hyper growth at the end of a month, which then hides all the team's performance that they did in that month. And so
That's true.
I think though it is the standard, it doesn't really tell you much. And so for me, what I've shifted towards is painting a bigger picture for leadership at any company and really even for my clients around leveraging DSO as a support metric to average days collected, average days delinquent, and collection effectiveness index. Right. And so I think those are probably the closest things to like an AR collection rate that you can get that is actually going to paint a bigger picture for a company. So I think using those multiple KPIs, in addition to really understanding how you're billing as a percentage of your booking and how
Mhm.
you're collecting as a percentage of your billing, that really gets you a better picture because you can't collect what you don't bill, right?
True.
And if you're only billing of a percentage of what you're booking, those funds aren't even available to collect, right?
Right.
And so for me, yeah, that has kind of become my mission, is to paint a broader picture for companies and better understand how they can leverage that information in a way that's actually going to tell a story and give you insights that are going to benefit your business long term versus throw DSO on a paper and when it spikes, say you have a problem, right? It's not always the case.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's something that we've also recognized with a lot of folks we speak to in the industry, that when you have a metric that serves a gold standard, it's very easy to operate with blinkers on and treat that as your North Star metric, but you're not really taking into account everything that's happening around it. So just measuring it, tracking it, and trying to optimize for it in isolation becomes a very dangerous position you put yourself in.
I agree. And it also gives an incorrect picture of that performance. And companies will get nervous if they see their
Right.
DSO spike. So you have one month that's, let's say it's 55, and the next month it's 75. But the consideration there could be that you had an increase in payment terms
Right.
by 30%. So you went from net 30 to net 45 or to net 60. And so it blurs, it muddies the water of that number. And so you're not really getting a full picture. So if your average terms are net 60,
Right.
you can't get afraid because your DSO went from 45 to 55, right?
Right. Absolutely. So just to summarize here, you mentioned that DSO in isolation is a dangerous trap to fall into. You must look at other metrics like your average days delinquent, your average days collected, and also your collection efficiency index. All right, awesome. So we talked about the metrics that you were pursuing, trying to optimize for, but just wanted to extend that question a little bit. And I would love for you to shed a little more light on, like the key AR transformation projects that you may have held while you were at GitLab.
Sure. So we did quite a few things at GitLab, and obviously their use case was one of hyper growth,
Right.
pre-IPO to post-IPO. And so for that process, it was really about building efficiency in the process before that invoice was generated.
Right.
Right. And so that's where it's going to become. Now, volume will always be a problem in a SaaS environment. And so
Absolutely.
it's how you prepare for that volume that's going to be the biggest driver there.
Mhm.
So first thing I kind of do is come in and you got to get you have to get a baseline. So you have
Right.
to know how your company is performing. And so the first thing I did was go look back 24 months, right? Get an idea of how we were booking, how we were billing, and then how we were collecting. And so ultimately, creating that cohort reporting gives you those benchmarks so that you can actually build off of it and understand where you need to build efficiencies. And that's not unique to GitLab, right? Like I've done that for every company that I joined over the last 15 years. And so it's not necessarily about the dashboard. It's about being able to answer the questions that
Right.
leadership has. And so a couple of the things that we did there was move from one-to-one billing to batch-based billing, which
Okay.
gave us the opportunity then to perform daily billing reconciliations, which is really critical, right? You want to have as many eyes on that invoice before it goes out the door as you can, and you want to make sure it's as accurate as possible. And again, not unique to GitLab, but I've done this at every company that I've joined, where it's about, okay, where are those hiccups in billing that we can correct before the invoice goes out so that we're increasing in that efficiency.
Mhm.
The next would be implementing automation tools for the accounts receivable team, which was basically creating the accounts receivable space and then implementing a tool that would allow us to scale and build efficiency without having to add, 10 people to your AR team, which isn't always necessary, which is really important, right? Because you don't want your team having to calculate all of those things every week to get that measure. You want to be able to just pop in and look at it and say, oh, okay, we spiked here. That might be a problem, right? So if your average days collected goes up when it shouldn't, you're like, oh, we something happened, right? We're able to kind of get an eye on it. So every change that I implemented there and at every prior company was about supporting like that cash visibility, like operational control, and getting the visibility into what was actually performing really well to begin with, and
Right.
then where we can create efficiency. Because I think the reality is that, automation is great,
Right.
but if you don't really know what you're automating, you're just kind of doing it faster. And
Right.
so really getting those benchmarks, I know it seems like a lot of upfront work, and it is,
Right.
but I think it's really beneficial upfront work. If you don't have a resource or a tool, and let's be real, like just looking at companies or like small and mid-sized businesses, they don't always have the money to
Right.
invest in the tool right now. So you
Right.
gotta pick and choose where you're gonna invest. And if you don't understand how your billing is performing or your AR is performing or your booking is performing, you don't know the problem that you're solving for. And I think that's really, what I work to do when I join any company or when I help my clients is about we need to identify what we're solving for so we can do that thing.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to spin your wheels and spend a lot of time doing things that may not necessarily solve anything. You're just
Right.
going to, build chaos faster.
Yeah, that's an interesting take actually. And again, something that has come up in a lot of conversations, and a lot of folks from the industry have also echoed the fact that they know that there's a problem in the AR space. They also understand that automation could be a solution to it. But there are a lot of folks who actually jump on the bandwagon because they feel that they're going to be missing out, and because everyone else is on the same hype train, without really having clear goals and guardrails in place to understand how it's going to impact the bottom line, right? So that's one of the pitfalls of actually being hyper, sort of invested and focused on adopting new technology and automation in general, I feel.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. That was great, Sarah. And since we spoke about automation, I want to, sort of elevate the conversation a little bit.
I feel like I know where you're going. I feel this.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
get into it.
yeah. All right, let's go. Let's go. I'm rubbing my hands right now.
Oh, we're gonna.
There we go. So, everyone knows that automation is a game changer, but we now live in an era where AI is prevalent. It's everywhere across all functions. Even more so, it's penetrated the AR function as well. And I'm not just talking about normal MLAI models, but I'm talking about like agentic AI, right? Embedding it into their product itself. And as I said, the momentum is gathering really quickly. You've been in this space for over 17 years. You've actually seen the evolution of technology and the adoption to the same, right? But I'm sure, like, even in your consulting practice, when, like companies come to you, they really need to know how they can separate the hype from the business impact driven value. And I just wanted to understand how you tackle these conversations, and like, what do you tell them about the use cases, the KPIs that agentic AI can impact in the AR context?
Yeah. Okay. So I love this line of questioning, and I love your perspective here, and I have a lot to say on this, but I'll try to practice some brevity here.
Sure.
So one thing that I always say is that AI isn't the strategy,
Right.
right? It's a support tool, right? It's intended to help your teams be more productive, but just kind of rushing to the table to get it,
Mhm.
you don't, again, we talked about this previously, but again, you need to understand what you're solving for AI to do anything, right? This is the same as using AI in your day to day. You need to really know your subject matter in order to get value out of it. So one of the things that I tell my clients, and when I'm asked about AI and how we're introducing it or how it's being implemented in the market, it really becomes about focusing on the outcome.
Yeah.
Right? So you're not buying a software per se. You're buying an outcome that you want to accomplish from this. And so I want to say, like, before you get dazzled by all the AI in the universe right now, really understand the outcome that you want to accomplish as a result of that purchase. And so I think it's really important to understand one, what's really slowing down your cash, right? That's definitely up there. And then, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to get visibility? Are you trying to deal with high volume? Do you have a velocity issue? Do you need to speed up prioritization? Like, what are the things that you are trying to accomplish as a business and how you are going to leverage and shape any technology solution inclusive of agentic AI and LLMs and all of these things. Otherwise, again, you're increasing chaos at a faster rate without, really solving a problem. And so for me, it's about understanding what you're trying to solve. And so if you have a high volume issue, as an example, then you need to work on triaging that volume. If you have low volume, high value, then you need to look up customer specific treatment of your portfolio. So it's about getting like smart escalation, automation, systems and tools. And so it's really about what you're going to focus on. So for me, one of the things that I talk about often is how you're going to leverage it based on the use case of your business. Because often, we all want the new shiny thing.
Of
And
course.
really, what it's going to come down to is you can get the shiny thing, but it may come down to what pieces are going to be the most important to your business today that
Right.
you can scale over time. So getting a tool or a software or AI or anything in that space has to solve the problem that you're facing right now and allow you to scale for the future. Right. So a couple of the things that I like to kind of go into here are like the most important for me from an accounts receivable team is going to be multi-channel communication. And the reason why I say this one in particular is your accounts receivable team is often working in multiple systems and tools. So you might have your AR software, your billing software, your CRM, all of these things. So your AR team has to consistently leave the tool that they're working in to go communicate with the rest of the organization. So tools that integrate with Slack and Salesforce and, whatever, your tech stack
Collaboration
is.
tools.
Yeah, that's going to help your AR team be efficient because they don't have to leave and then get sidetracked with something else, right? So you're not going to go from your AR tool to your ticketing system to your cases and Salesforce to then have to go communicate with your sales organization, then request something from your billing team, then
Yeah.
have to go back and check that make sure that thing got done, right? And so I feel like there's a lot of questions, but I guess I went the long way to say understand the outcome
Right.
before you jump into an AI solution or a technology solution or anything like that. Because I think, your team needs to actually be able to use that in a way that's effective for them. So don't try to hit a moving target, right? Like AR technology doesn't just help teams like collect faster. It helps you communicate better. It helps you build efficiencies in that space. It helps you scale without adding headcount. So I guess you need to understand what in there you're trying to solve for your business. So yeah, it would be, focus on the outcome, not just the shiny thing, right? And
Makes
AI
sense.
is the shiny thing right now.
It certainly is. And I think it's just a question of understanding that there are advantages, but if implemented in a haphazard, sort of like spray and pray manner, it's not going to produce the results, and in fact it can actually compound the complexities that you're already grappling with. So yeah, interesting take there. um I just want to delve a little bit deeper here. I know sort of like painted the tip of the iceberg here. But when it comes to AR, one of the key challenges that a lot of companies encounter is the fact that, of course, there are like umpteen number of invoices that they deal with, aligned with, hundreds of customers. And there are complexities aligned with each of these, right? Just in terms of magnitude and also in terms of variance, because every customer reacts differently, behaves differently, in terms of just their payment terms, their methods. They may have custom billing cycles. Even their AP processes could be slightly different. And we've realized over a period of time working with the who's who in the industry that the AI models can actually respond to very distinctive behavioral customer signals, right? So just wanted your thoughts on how you see this aspect of agentic AI within accounts receivable, determined and influenced a lot by these very custom behavioral patterns across different customers that a company deals with.
Yeah, and I think that to me is what presents one of the more substantive discussions on how these AI models can actually help accounts receivable teams.
Mhm.
Because you see it everywhere and everyone's like, use our AI. And I think it, while it learns and it trains, I still think there is this need for human connection in this space. I even talked to a girlfriend of mine who had a tool that she was working with, and they pivoted their entire support model to AI agents, and she walked away from the tool.
Okay.
Because when you're dealing with money and you're talking with people about their financial position and situations that they're in, and there are complexities with that. And it's
Mhm.
also a sensitivity to an organization, especially smaller organizations that don't have all the free cash in the world, right?
True. True.
So I think, that says a lot that someone would walk away from a tool that worked for them because they no longer have the ability to have a human interaction with a support team. I think that's a big deal. So I think leveraging how AI is used in an accounts receivable space is so critically important because you still need that mind of that expert in that space to really be able to drive, mold, and shape how the AR can interact. I think there's things where AI is going to be fantastic for repeatable things like, payment reconciliation,
Right.
payment application, these wonderful spaces that are very, very time consuming for accounts receivable professionals, but that also will allow them to break away from doing those very manual, low ROI. I mean, it's important to post cash, don't get me wrong, but those low ROI things for that person, and allows them to be in a space where they can start thinking about strategy because they're not doing all of these kind of mundane,
Repetitive,
repeatable things.
low value manual work, right?
Right. And I think those are the things where AI in accounts receivable really has an opportunity to help these professionals actually start working through strategy. One of the things with AR voices is that they are often muted because they're really, really busy. It's not that they don't want to be strategic.
Yeah.
It's that they don't have the opportunity to be strategic because each one of, and I say this and I want to back up for just a second because I think that this is a really important point to make.
Yeah.
When I started forever ago in accounts receivable, we used to have this bar for measure that said you would have one accounts receivable professional for every $4 million in AR,
Okay.
right? Sorry, in revenue. So 4 million in revenue, new person. So every time a company would increase, you'd have a person if there was an
Headcount
expectation that
scale.
revenue was going to increase by 4 million. So that is not the case anymore.
Right.
So I've managed teams where, and I myself have managed portfolios upwards of 130 million as an individual, right?
Mhm.
And so you have people that are managing 400 or 500 open invoices at any given time per person, or on teams that have 1 to 3 people that are managing 160 million in AR. And I mean, so you think about how busy those team members are, and they're not just collecting, they're resolving disputes, they're doing relationship management, they're customer support, they're helping self-service customers, right? So they're doing a lot with a very, very limited scope. So it's like it's easy to say be more strategic because you don't understand that there is so much gray area to what accounts receivable professionals do. This is where we get into that oversimplification that we talked about earlier. But they're doing so much, and so much is manual because companies are not paying attention. It's like, oh, it's back office. So,
Mm.
like, sit baby in the corner and move on because this is what can be considered at some companies as a inexpensive or low value, and I don't believe that. I mean, obviously, you know how I feel about accounts
Of course we
receivable.
do. That's why you're here.
Yeah, but I think, the reality is the reason why their voices can't be elevated is because they're so busy doing so much
A lot of manual
as
busy.
what I would consider to be low value work. And that is the space where I think AI and technology will allow people to have an opportunity to be more strategic, which is ultimately what you want, right? We don't want box checkers in an organization. You want people who are driving strategy in your organization that's going to get you to scale and success.
Absolutely.
I said that the long way, but
No, but sometimes the long way is the right way. And
oh,
this coming from you, this coming from you definitely carries a little more weightage. Um, and it also echoes the thoughts with which we've tried to build this property and community, Heroes of AR, right? Because very often they go under the radar, they're unsung, and as you rightly said, that the voices of AR get muted very often, not because they don't have a voice of their own, but it's almost as though they are deeply ingrained, operating in manual processes that just don't allow them the bandwidth and time to operate at a more strategic level. And that's precisely where perhaps automation and AI comes into the picture. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah.